Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ohio Dirt Track Podcast. My name is Clint.
And I'm Jacob.
And we have another big show for you today. Jacob, we got to talk to a relatively well-known sprint car driver today.
Yeah, he's won a couple races in his day, a couple championships. 389 races, won to be exact, 10 championships also to be exact. So yeah, he's kind of good.
Currently out on the road with the World of Outlaws, and will be here in Attica for the Brad Doty Classic. And then following Attica, we'll be at the Kings Royal at Eldora. If you haven't figured it out by now, from Fargo, North Dakota, here's our conversation today with Mr. Donny Schatz. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here on the phone with Mr. Donny Schatz. Donny, thank you for calling in and talking to us today.
Thanks for having me. So
you're coming off of a weekend in Knoxville, and then most recently, I believe this most recent race was a fifth place finish, and a pretty consistent season so far with the World of Outlaws. I wanted to ask, consistency seems to be your story across the years, and what is the key to staying consistent when you're running over 80 shows every summer?
Well, it's a lot of things. It all starts at the race shop. The guys do a great job of, we don't change product manufacturers on things. We've worked with the same race cars and engine builders since 2000, and that sets something for itself. They know the equipment and the way they prepare things, and go the extra mile to make sure things don't fall apart. When there's a problem, they fix it. They basically just go the extra mile. That has a lot to do with consistency and longevity. And we'd obviously like to be more consistent, but that's the battle in this sport, is always trying to stay on the upper edge of it.
This is your first year kind of with the big change in the off season. You have a new crew chief. So what's that transition been like for you this year?
It's been really simple. Steve Swenson has been at Tony Stewart Racing as long as I've been there, 12 years. He was there when I came there, and he's been the backbone of the 15 team for a long time. He worked right alongside Rick Warner, and like I said, he was the man that made sure everything, they knew where they were going. And so he's very familiar with what's going on, and he's, just was never really in a crew chief's position. And, he's in a good position right now where he's got, two great young guys, Jacob Weaver and Brad Alexander. And, it's a little bit different dynamic than we've had in the past. There's, all of us are getting to be older guys now, and you got to keep some young blood in the mix. So that's where it's at. Scoop does a great job of making sure that Brad and Jacob do what he wants them to, and allows him to focus on the car stuff. So it's been a real easy transition. He knows how I communicate. I know how he communicates. Because we've been racing together on the same team for a long time. So it's really not this big a transition as what everybody thinks.
How many guys do you have out on the road full time with you?
There's 3 full-time guys. And that's, some teams probably do it with 2, but, my guys are very fortunate being located in Brownsburg, Indiana, where they get to go back quite a bit. So they do get a little bit more traveling, but, they get home to see their families, get home to recharge their batteries, and, make sure everything's taken care of in pristine order all the time. So just the location alone, it does allow them to be home more, but it's a little bit more travel there compared to some guys who just stay out all week long, all year.
I've talked to a few race teams this year who've said that they've had trouble finding the guys that wanted to come out and be on the road and stay on the road to help. What kind of things, if you were talking to a young person who may be coming out of an SAE program or an automotive program, what kind of characteristics or what kind of things does it take to make it through the outlaw season?
Well, it's really hard to put a finger on one thing, but I can tell you that's 100% true. It is hard to find guys that are interested in coming out here, and it's not the race, and it's not the working on the race cars. It's the travel and a lot of the unknowns. Some people think it's a rock star party lifestyle. It's the exact opposite of that. These guys are beating up and down the road several hours a day when we're racing from track to track, and everything has to be clean and maintained. There's a couple days a week where sleep is just at a bare minimum. And you have to make that racing team and your performance the 100% priority. So it really takes its toll on people looking for a normal lifestyle. And in this day of age, it's just something that's become few and far between. So we're very fortunate to have them great guys. And when you get those, you try to hang on to them and take care of them the best you can. But probably one of the things that's hard for, finding people is the fact that when things aren't going as exactly like you want, they're not perfect. Some guys got to find a way to hit the reset button. They got to find a way to regroup. And the hardest part about regrouping when you race with the Outlaws is there's a race coming up in a day or two. There's no way you can just say, well, we're going to go home. We're not going to race this weekend. We're going to do this. And when you make that commitment to the Outlaws and you sign a platinum agreement, that's obviously, it's just second nature. You're going to be at all them races. So trying to regroup and reset and gather up and build performance, if you tear stuff up, there's just a lot of factors that make it very grueling. And, a lot of people don't really understand it until they actually live it. And I hope everybody gets that opportunity to live it someday so they can appreciate it a little more.
Another one of the big talking points over the off season for you was the development of that Ford engine. So how is the development of the Ford engine going?
Well, the development stages are all pretty much handled. They've developed a new block in the head, and they have a motor on the ground that we've done a lot of testing. We've done roughly 12 race nights of testing. At least the lap total is what it was. And now it's to the point of being able to get that thing on the ground and get it in the car. They're a little skeptical about just going and shoving it in the 15 car right away. Tony's going to go do some racing with it and some testing and some other things and just see where we stack up. I mean, it's a phenomenal piece. I've driven it. I've been the one that done most of the testing and it feels really good. The thing is when you go testing, sometimes what you test doesn't necessarily mean when you show up at the racetrack, it's going to be something that's, it's just going to be, where you want it to be. You might need to make a little bit of adjustment. So we've got great people working on that and looking forward to hopefully getting it in the car here at some point this year real soon and making that so we can, get everything switched over.
A little bit of your history. You started out go-kart racing like many other people who have found their way into this sport and then kind of jumped right into a sprint car at 14. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
I was talking with an Indy Pro 2000 team owner yesterday, and he told me that if you wanted to find a life-consuming hobby, that you should either buy horses or a race car. And I think you might have had family history with both horses and a race car. And is that something that's just you get into because of obsessive nature, or is it dedication? What is that like?
Well, you're absolutely right. I've been around both hobbies. My family, being from North Dakota, my dad and mom both grew up on the farm and were around horses. And when I was a small child, something that they were really into was draft horses, like similar to the Budweiser Clydesdales, but just a different, they were called Belgians. They were just a different color. So, they got into those and it's kind of crazy. They helped build their truck stop business with the horses, doing parades around home and, going across the country and doing different things, being part of the Milwaukee Circus Parade, going to all over the country to these draft horse shows and meeting a lot of friends. So it was very similar to, racing at a competitive level like the World of Outlaws. It's just something a little bit different. I was able to compete with those, but, since the time I could walk and kick tires, I was always into racing. And when I got to be 10 years old, I got the opportunity to get a go-kart and we did a little bit of racing and it slowed down some of the horse showing and all those things. And obviously when I started racing, it really changed the dynamic and we kind of switched gears from horse showing to sprint car racing, and that where the story leads to today. So it's always been a pretty competitive nature in my family, and they've been there every step of the way, from having my own team to still being a part of my racing career and going to all the races and making sure people have access to merchandise and all the things. So it's really neat to see it evolve from horse showing to racing. But the nice thing about the race cars is if you get mad at them or something, you can always just leave it sit. You can't do that with a horse. So it's I don't miss the horses, but we still have a little. My family still dabbles in them a little bit.
Donny, what is your favorite track to run nowadays?
It's hard for me to say that I have a favorite. I mean, it's always really neat when you get to come around home and race, but it's I've been very fortunate to go to a lot of different places over the years, and man, there's good things and there's bad things that happen at all of them, the good ones, and you try to not look at any of them in a bad manner. So I guess when I say that, it's really hard for me to say something bad about a track. And if I look at, I feel like if I look at one that's better than the other, then that's hypocritical. So I try to keep them all even keel and just look forward to going to every place we get to go.
Do you have a favorite racing memory?
I do. Being able to win the Knoxville Nationals the first time was a feeling that, man, I didn't think I'd ever, I come close several times. I think I had to run second 3 or 4 times. So, you feel like you're almost there, and you got it almost figured out what it takes. And you're so close, and then nothing. And then you're so close, and nothing again. When you actually do finish that and win the race, it's a real sense of satisfaction. I mean, a lot of guys are never going to get that opportunity to be in that position, let alone win it. And it's when we take our country's biggest race and the most prestigious race, to be able to put yourself in that position, it's pretty incredible, and that's probably my favorite racing memory. It's a memory you share with every guy that's on the team. The sense of satisfaction. Everyone knows how hard it is. It's a long week. It's every time you hit the track, sharing it with family members and the fans and people who stood behind you. It's really kind of a surreal moment that you wish everyone could experience, but obviously that's not going to happen.
If I remember correctly, I watched you win the King's Royal on television in 1997. Is that correct?
No, not in 97. 97 would have been my first year with the Outlaws. I may have won it on television, but I don't think it was. I struggled at Eldora my first days when I went there. I was lucky if I got in the show. I just couldn't quite figure it out. So, it's one of them places that you had to learn how to respect it before you could get better. And we've done that, but I'm not exactly sure what the first year I won the King's Royal was.
After 15 seasons, running in a family-owned car, you transitioned over to TSR. Can you tell us what it's like to make that kind of change and from driving something that's family-owned for so many years and then drive equipment that belongs to somebody else? And how did it change racing for you?
Well, there's a lot of dynamics that change with it. Anybody that has their own team knows, what it takes from a, physical work standpoint, from an emotional standpoint on your family, and financial. And we have always had great people with us, to help us along the way and make sure everything was taken care of, and very fortunate for that. It got to the point where when I got the opportunity to drive for Tony, it was really like a no-brainer because I was going to be able to race with the same people, use the same equipment, and it was going to allow my family to focus on the things in their business and not have to focus, 100% of the time on trying to run a race team from Fargo, North Dakota. And, that happens to be my home, and I never planned on changing where my home's at, but it's really